Well, glad to have you with us once again for Curiosity Not Judgment. Welcome. My name is Birga.
And I'm Gary.
So, you have known me, Gary, for many years at this point, and over the years, I'm sure that you've heard many a story about people who have come to me with some pretty epic problems
Mm.
and asked for help.
Hmm.
And that situation has come up again with a truly epic problem, and I've lost some sleep over it. I've shed some tears over it, and I'm really struggling with what my role is in the midst of this problem. And so I thought this might be a good conversation for us to have about when does somebody else's problem become your problem, and how do you navigate that space when you're being asked for help?
Wow. Well, and now you've involved me and this podcast. So thank you for that.
Sure thing. You're welcome.
It's always good to spread our worries and our activities, right? And get help from friends and get wise counsel. That's always a good thing. It's a great topic because um, none of us can do everything.
Right.
We can all do something.
Mm-hmm.
But what's the curious questions around should we get involved? Should we say no? Should we say yes? And if we say yes or no, how then should we proceed?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we always on this podcast talk about putting relationships first. So
Mm-hmm.
that has to be one of the considerations. What will this do with your relationship? And what is that relationship? If it's a family member, hard to say no.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe shouldn't say no. If it's a complete stranger, easier to say no,
Mm.
right? And so, kind of thinking about from that perspective just from start, but also the gravity of the problem
Right.
and what do we think we can bring to that problem?
Mm.
Competence, confidence, um, the ability to help or add value in any way.
Yeah.
Sometimes people just ask for help just because they're overwhelmed,
Yes.
even if there's no clear indication that we could be of value at all.
Mm.
Other times they're coming to us because we have specific value or perceived value for that situation. But what a great topic.
Well, I also approach it from a place of faith because my faith is of utmost importance to me. And a lot of the principles within my faith talk about sacrificial giving, sacrificial loving, giving even when it's uncomfortable or inconvenient. And so I wrestle tremendously when I get pulled into a situation that becomes very large and I don't know how much of myself to put in put into it. And so I think as we independently have to ask our curious questions within the context of our faith, our values, our capacity, we're going to come up with different answers, I think, based on who we are as individuals.
And in what particular season we're in,
Sure.
and what our own current situation is in those 5 seconds. Um, and if you talk about sacrificial giving, sacrificial loving, um, you know, Andre and I travel a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and we were just in some situations yesterday, and we met people all along the road yesterday. We were on a plane that was actually on the way to Denver and was diverted. And the pilot comes on and says, "We don't have enough fuel to keep circling," which is always, I think, a funny thing to say to a plane full of
But
people.
don't worry.
But don't worry, right? So we're going to divert to another airport. Well, do we have the fuel to get there? Anyway, but we were talking with some people at the gate at our next destination, waiting again, about how people's different approaches are and
Mm-hmm.
how some people are kind of friendly and approachable, and some people are not,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of what goes around comes around, and it's legend that if you're not willing to help out your friends when they're in trouble, why what's going to happen when you're in trouble, right? So
Sure.
even from a just a worldly view, it's important to if you're gonna be a friend,
Mm.
right? And that means in the good times and the bad times,
Mm.
right? And so I think there's an inclination for most people to try to help if they can, given a situation where the person is known to them and they want the relationship to continue.
Mm.
But look, here's a situation. If someone's being pulled away in a riptide, you know what? I have the choice: jump in there and try to save them,
Mm.
or go get help. I know myself.
Mm.
I'm not the strongest swimmer in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I need to be going and getting help. So I think there's that question to start with,
Yeah.
right? Is like, um, thank you for bringing me your problem. Appreciate it very much. It's hard to bring problems to people. Some people have a hard time asking for help.
Yes.
So acknowledge the fact that the person has come to you, and then evaluate together.
Yeah.
You know, am I the right person to do this? How can we approach this together? Should we go get help,
Yeah.
or are we going to try to tackle this on our own?
Yeah. I appreciate that example. And I think that's actually a really interesting mental picture for me because I think in my particular situation, I have the education, the background, and the professional experience to know what to do in a riptide. And at various seasons of my life, I have been a strong swimmer, right? So I could wade in and know what I would need to do to swim parallel to the shore
Yep.
until you're out of the pool, right? However, I think, again, based on our individual capacities, education, all of those things, it might be time to call somebody else in. And it is an evaluation that we have to do and probably have to redo in every situation that we encounter that's going to require something that is potentially that strong of a pull. Because maybe my glory swimming days are behind me and I am thinking too highly of myself. I don't know.
Well, you bring up a great example of that too. You might jump in and realize this is over my head.
Mm.
Can I now extract myself from a situation to go get help?
Mm.
Maybe too late, maybe not. But I think, though, that you bring up a great point there, which is just because you make an initial decision to try to help
Mm.
doesn't mean you're stuck with that decision, doesn't mean that you have to be pulled under also.
Mm.
So, what are the other tools? You bring up a good point. Telling the person, screaming at the person to swim parallel to the shore
Mm.
could be a first step.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes we can step into problems
Mm.
and not just dive in.
Yeah. Yeah. You're wading in.
You're wading
Yeah.
in as opposed to diving in.
Yeah.
And
I like
so
that.
that might be a first determination. But then again, then it's like, okay, is this over both of our heads?
Yeah. Well, and are there tools that you are able to access?
Mm-hmm.
You know, is that tool someone else who
Mm-hmm.
is certified in another way or has a professional competency or a skill set that you aren't as strong in? Who else needs to be pulled in, not to get more people caught up in a tide,
Right.
but to have the right combination of people with the right knowledge to help extract the original person in distress from that situation?
Yeah. I mean, you may have a buoy with a rope right next to you,
Mm.
with a coil of rope that you
Yeah.
could throw to the person and try to drag them in versus trying to swim them in, for instance. And so there are tools available to us. But so back to the point, though, is first we have to decide kind of yes or no, or maybe, or wade versus dive and all of that. And then once you're into it, it doesn't mean that you're stuck with that course, I suppose,
Mm.
is what I was trying to say is you can evaluate as you're going through this. Okay, I think we've proven to ourselves we're in over our heads. Let's go get help.
Mm-hmm.
Or are there other tools that we can access?
Yeah.
Or are there other situations? So you're not just stuck. So I think inaction is action, right?
Mm-hmm.
A
Sure.
non-decision is a decision.
Sure.
So sometimes I think it's okay to make an initial decision or express your desire to help, even if you're not the one who ultimately solves the problem.
Yeah. And I think, you know, as you become aware of the problem, you're going to have to first ask that question, even before stepping in or wading in, of, am I willing to interrupt the things going on in my life right now to even approach this issue? Because again, I don't want to take this analogy too far, but if you're having a Mai Tai on the beach as part of your vacation and somebody gets caught up in a riptide and starts yelling for help, or someone you don't know for that matter, are you going to get up and disrupt your vacation knowing that maybe this could change the course of your relaxation and your me time and your
Hmm.
whatever else, right?
Well, and the fact if you're having a Mai Tai, is that number one, two, or four? Because that could affect your ability.
Sure.
It might not affect your bravado, but it
Good
might
good
affect your
point.
ability to even get in and help. So I think assessing where you are,
Yeah.
assessing who else is depending on you, and what other commitments that you've made
Mm,
are part of it too, because it's not always a drowning situation.
right.
Sometimes it's just, I say just, a time commitment or
Mm,
a resource commitment on your
mm-hmm,
part. Resources brings up the fact of money and other
mm-hmm,
things too. Sometimes we might be asked to give money to a situation or resources to a
mm-hmm.
situation, or talent to a situation, or could you come and help do this, which also is an evaluation
Mm,
of, and also there are people who might be asking you for help who, quite frankly, should be doing it on their own.
mm.
So are you enabling a behavior of asking for help when really you should say, nope, I think you've got this?
Yeah.
Or at least saying, well, what do you think you should do first?
Mm,
Right? Children, we're often in that situation with children with as parents, is, well, what do you think you ought to do?
mm-hmm.
Right? What would be your first course of action? Or what do you think is sometimes the best course of action, not to go solve it for them?
Yeah. And I think this issue probably is very emotional for me because of how I am wired. I'm very empathetic. I get pulled into people's stories very quickly. I can sometimes get consumed by the story itself and feeling the sense of desperation to fix it. But one of the things I have continued to ask myself as a curious question is, what is God's role?
Mm-hmm.
What is my role?
Mm-hmm.
And help me not to confuse the two.
That's right. Yeah, that's I've told this joke before, which is there the difference between man and God is God never thinks he's man. We are not the masters of our universe. That's a movie coming out my grandkids are interested in, and I remember those cartoons from when I was growing up. But
Mm-hmm.
we can't solve everything,
Mm-hmm.
and not only do we not have the capacity, we don't have the ability
Right.
to solve all problems. And so that the initial valuation of, um, look, if I spread myself too thin, it's the whole jack of all trades, master of none thing. I can solve a certain number of issues and problems with and for a certain number of people and organizations. But there comes a time where I will be useful to no one
Mm-hmm.
if I overcommit and overextend.
Mm-hmm. I think, though, the question for many people is, how do you assess that? Or
Mm.
when do you know you've gotten to that point? Because
Mm-hmm.
we hear the phrases about burnout,
Mm-hmm.
overcommitment, all of those things that happen when we have taken on too many initiatives, too many projects, too many individuals who need our help or our engagement. And then you find yourself incapacitated on the couch with a mental health crisis or a health crisis or something else that has just really laid you out because you weren't able to make that correct assessment for yourself of, I'm going over the edge.
Well, you've said a couple of key things there. So let's start with made the correct assessment yourself.
Mm,
I think I've told the story before, but when my late wife passed away, my dad came over a few days later and asked how
mm,
I was doing, and I said, fine. And he says, you're probably not the best person to make that evaluation right now.
mm,
And he was right. So, how how I determine whether I'm in a burnout situation is a whole subject you could spend a
mm,
lot of time on. And it's a very individual thing.
mm-hmm,
You go talk to a really good ER nurse about burnout versus a an office worker who is very much into process and likes things happening and is in a job where you turn the crank every week and the right out and the same output
mm,
happens. Those are two different
true.
situations and people,
Yep.
and they're wired differently.
Yes.
And so Burnout for one is very different than
Yeah.
burnout for another. Some people thrive on being overextended and being at that edge of burnout, and it's something that they want. There's also a difference between burning out on things that we enjoy doing and we're good at doing,
Mm,
and we're getting a sense of satisfaction and we have some competence in doing, versus things that we do not have those things.
mm,
So there's a multi-dimensional matrix that you've just thrown out there. There is no answer.
yeah.
There's no single true answer to that question of, is someone close to burnout or am I close to burnout? It's very situational, and it's very dependent on the people, the situations,
Mm,
and my current ability to sustain new things right now,
mm,
or sustain what's going on in my life right now. There are indicators, though.
mm.
How are you sleeping at night? Are you eating well? Are you taking care of yourself? If you're not taking care of yourself, is that just bad habits, or is it because you're being prevented from taking care of yourself because of the situations that you are agreeing to do?
Mhm. There are so many great, curious questions that we can
Mm-hmm.
throw into the mix right now. And I probably would start with, if you are presented with a problem from someone else, an external source that you are weighing, do I get involved or do I not? I think one of the first curious questions I might pose is, am I a good judge of my own capacity or do I need to involve someone else?
Boy, that's a perfect question.
And
And that can vary over time.
it certainly can. It certainly can. And if you've made the determination that I really need someone else's guidance on this, can I find a trustworthy person that I can have this conversation with, that can give me some honest feedback around, they know my capacity, they know my passions, my drive, my all of the things, and what might potentially push me over the edge, and will they speak truth to me?
Mm-hmm. Fascinating set of questions, because who is that right person?
Yeah.
It's somebody who has to know you, know everything about you,
Mm,
likes you anyway, and is for you.
yeah.
And that's a tough. How many people like that do you have in your life?
Well, I mean, even in the best case scenario for myself, that person would be my husband, but he does not understand what I do at work or a lot of the projects that I do at work. And so I think if I were to ask a question about a work related problem, I don't think he would be able to accurately assess where that falls kind of in the line of hierarchy of things I'm trying to solve or work through. And so it might be a combination of people depending on the problem that's being presented.
And let's not give up on our spouses or our trusted advisors just by saying they wouldn't understand the specific situation. There's a way for us to convert that situation into a language that they can understand.
Good point.
You might be able to say, look, here's a new problem I'm thinking about taking on. As far as time and commitment and stress, it's probably a 5 out of 10, and it's going to take about this many hours, in my
Mm,
estimation, to solve to the best of my ability. They're not going to hold you to that, but look, saying I'm going to take on a 2 versus I'm going to take on a 10,
hmm.
they probably could give you some
Good point.
feedback on.
Yeah, no, I think that's spot on. Am I using that for a phrase correctly? My tired brain and now starting to question my word choices, but I think that was an excellent way to frame that. And so let's assume for a moment that we have made the determination, okay, we're going to step forward into this problem. Whether it's, self-reflection and you think yes, you can handle it, or an external person tells you that they give you the go ahead. So now I think the questions really revolve around, is this something that I can do in my own experience with my own set of tools, in my own professional environment, or do I need to begin to bring in outside help, outside tools, additional partners, and really start to make that type of an assessment as well?
Yeah, and I think setting those expectations right up front. It's like, hey, I'm willing to help you. All I have is my own experience.
Mm.
I'm going to use a lot of I statements.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to use a lot of, here's a situation I've been into that's similar. No two situations are exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
Here's some of the things that I can bring, and here's some of the things that I can't bring. But that's a harder conversation. More of, let's set expectations that I'm willing to help you within my current capabilities,
Mm-hmm.
which are always changing. But if we both determine that we need to go get help, let's go get help. Now, within my capabilities, here's some of the things that I might, and the more questions that we can ask versus statements. I think I'm always concerned when someone listens to me, interrupts me in the middle of my paragraph, trying to, and you know me, I love to set context, but interrupts me in the middle of my context first paragraph and says, I know exactly what you should do. You should go do this.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And prescribes before they diagnose. Right. So there's, I think if we can ask questions based on our experience, what's your value in this situation?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think your ideal outcome would be, and why?
Mm-hmm.
What's your motivation in this? What do you perceive the other person's motivation is? Have you asked them whether that's their motivation or not? I think the more questions that we can ask, we don't want to absolve the other person or persons of doing the work
Mm-hmm.
of trying to figure this out on their own. It's fine to say, look, two people thinking about this, I'm happy to be a sounding board.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what you're thinking about doing,
Yeah,
you know.
that's a good way to phrase it.
But I don't want to jump in and tell you what to do.
Yeah.
So if we have that, you're cool with that expectation, no problem. By the way, I've got about this many plates I'm spinning right now. Happy to spin this plate with you, but I probably don't have 40 hours to give this week.
Mm-hmm.
I may have an hour or two.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's me going somewhere and confronting a person with you, that's a whole different story
Yeah.
than me talking to you about it and you going and taking the action.
Yeah, good point. Are you a sounding board or somebody looking for you to solve the problem on their behalf?
Exactly.
No, excellent question as well. So then let's make the assumption that we've gone forward, we're getting involved in the problem, and now we begin to feel that we maybe have gotten in over our heads. And I can tell you right now, just even during the course of this last 20 minutes, I can feel the fatigue hitting me in a way where I'm not confident in my word choices. I had a pretty bizarre situation earlier today where I couldn't figure out how to spell a word that was like at the third grade level. I'm short circuiting a little bit,
Yep.
right? And so, is the fatigue a direct correlation of getting too deep into the problem? I don't know, and I'm trying to assess that as well.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And don't be too quick to judge yourself either. I mean, look, you are where you are, and it doesn't do any good to say, "Oh, I've taken on too much again, and I'm a terrible person, and let's go right to shame." Right? Okay, look, um, you are not a bad person for being empathetic. We need more empathetic people. So let's start there. Second, you've involved yourself with a certain number of things. Are there things, if you want to do something new, can you take something out?
Mm.
Like the old organization trick of, yeah, you can go buy something if you've got a place for it on that shelf, which means you have to remove something else,
Mm-hmm.
right? Are you in a position that you've got free space on your shelf, or do you need to take something else off before
Mm-hmm.
you put this thing on? And if you're short circuiting, is that is that I'm not sure you're in a controlled experience in life,
Yeah.
a controlled laboratory experiment
Yes.
where, okay, it's just because I'm considering doing this.
Yeah.
It might be because I didn't sleep well last night. It might be because of, my heater broke, or something. The dog woke me up twice. There Think about the last 24 hours and think about, are there other things, or is it because of this? And if it's because of this, is it important enough to take on? And I explain to the people around me, I might be short circuiting for the next couple of days while I take this on.
Mm.
And while I try to figure out how to jettison something else, could you help me? First of all, could you understand that I'm going to be like this, and give me a little bit of grace? That person may say, you know what? No, I'm in my own stuff right now, and I need you. And that's not that that's a good thing, but It's a
It's an
data
honest thing,
point.
yeah.
And it's a data point. And if you're in conversations like that, thank goodness
Mm-hmm.
that you've got people who will push back on you
Mm-hmm.
for that. Anyway, so the point is, the more we can talk things with people, how many times are you watching a show and say, just tell the person what happened,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, we tend to not do that. So the more we can communicate, the more curious questions we can ask in the process, the more we can set expectations up front, the better off the situation is going to be, no matter what that is.
Mm. I think that's a good note to end it on. Well, if you are facing a problem, I hope some of these questions really help you to navigate to whether or not you weighed in, how far you weighed in, and when you need to ask for backup or help. So, thank you, Gary. I always appreciate processing life with you real time.
I'm happy to be a sounding board,
Why, thank you.
but don't give me those problems.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. All right, we'll see y'all next week. Have a great time. Until then.
Take care.